Week for both candidates. They've held dozens of rallies. President Trump even held some in 3 different states on the same day, with Air Force One in the background. Former Vice President Joe Biden has been more cautious, holding smaller rallies. Lindsay Arabian reports on the campaign trail.
With the election just 4 days away, President Trump and former Vice President Biden, along with their running mates, are busy bringing their closing arguments to swing states, the two approaching their rallies in very different styles. With Biden pushing for masks and social distancing, Trump continues to disregard safety precautions, holding giant in-person rallies. COVID-19 is a major deciding factor in this election, and the two candidates couldn't be more divided on how to handle it.
Right now, it's COVID, 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 no matter what happens. COVID, COVID. No, we're rounding the term. We're rounding that beautiful turn.
The White House now listing the end of the pandemic as an accomplishment for the president, despite nearly 500,000 Americans contracting the virus this week alone, with the worst COVID numbers since the pandemic started last winter. Senator Harris attacking Trump during the campaign in Arizona, claiming he failed the American people.
The President of the United States is also the Commander-in-Chief, who has then as his highest responsibility to concern himself with the health and safety of the American people. And on that count, Donald Trump failed. He failed us. He failed the American people.
On the same day, Vice President Pence criticized Biden's proposed response to the pandemic, claiming he could shut down the country.
Joe Biden talking about shutting down our economy. We're opening up America again.
Biden responded by quoting Chief of Staff Mark Meadows directly.
But this administration has just given up. Over the weekend, the White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows went on television and admitted that they've waved the white flag and declared surrender. He said, quote, "We're not going to control the pandemic," end of quote. The American people deserve so much better than this.
In the final days leading up to the election, both campaigns will be visiting swing states such as Arizona, Michigan, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Florida in an attempt to rake in as many votes as they can. Trump plans to hold 11 rallies in the 48 hours leading up to the election. Biden will be joined by former President Barack Obama at a rally in Florida on Saturday. I'm Lindsay Arabian, reporting for Chapman News.
Thank you, Lindsay. Joe Biden is leading the polls by 9 points ahead of President Trump, but many predict we won't know who will win the election until after November 3rd. Polls show close races between Trump and Biden in key states like Florida, Texas, and Georgia. With mail-in ballots becoming a popular method for voting, only 8 states expect to have at least 98% of unofficial results by noon on November 4th. The timing to call the election will depend on when voters return their ballots and how fast states are to officially count their mailed votes. Although Biden has been ahead of the race since February, Trump may pull another 2016 unexpected victory. And with more on election insights is Dr. Lori Cox Hahn, a presidency scholar at Chapman University. Dr. Hahn, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so Chapman News has a couple questions for you. And our first one is that this has been the most unusual campaign in American history. Will it set a precedent for the future of elections and the presidency?
Well, hopefully by 2024, we will no longer be in this pandemic. So we're seeing a lot of things this time that we've just never seen before. Different strategies in terms of campaigning with social distancing and so many people staying at home and, with the exception of all the people that go out to the Trump rallies, I guess. But it really just upended traditional strategies. So I think that this is kind of a once in a lifetime, hopefully anyway, kind of event that we're seeing play out on the campaign trail right now. There's just so much, like I said, there's so much volatility out there right now, and it's hard to predict. And I wouldn't put too much stock in polls because I don't know that, the methodology on polling is accurate right now, reliable, but certainly in the middle of a pandemic, I definitely wouldn't bet too much on what the pollsters are saying right now. So, I mean, the 24-hour news cycle is still dictating so much about what we see, what we hear, what we talk about, but it changes so dramatically. It's hard to even keep up with some of what seemed like really big storylines at the time, and then 2 or 3 days later, it's just we're on to something else.
Yeah, and is there anything else you would like to add in terms of just the unprecedented nature of this 2020 election in comparison to previous elections that you've studied?
you know, Trump is a disruptor in terms of how presidency scholars view him, not only in terms of campaigning but also just in governing. He's an outsider. Even after he's been in Washington, he's still campaigning as an anti-establishment candidate at a moment when there's still a lot of anxiety within the electorate about establishment Washington, and I don't think the pandemic has really helped that for a lot of people. So you know, like I said, I'm hoping for a clear result and legitimacy on election night. Whether we get that or not, that just remains to be seen.
And Dr. Hahn, thank you so much for providing us with your insight on the elections, and we look forward to having you back again on Chapman News.
Of course, happy to be here.
And next up, 11 propositions are on the California ballot this election season, but some are getting special attention. Spencer Riley has the breakdown.
The battle over Prop 15 is an intense one. The measure aims to create new rules leading to an increase in taxes for commercial and industry property owners. The revenue is expected to fund public services and schools. Those in support of the proposition call it a balanced reform that closes a loophole in the California tax code which benefits the wealthy, while critics say that the bill will increase the cost of living and make everything we buy more expensive. Prop 16 is about the return to affirmative action. This measure would allow race, ethnicity, and gender to be a factor for government decision-making policies. Supporters say this would increase access to fair wages, jobs, and education, while critics say it could encourage favoritism or discrimination. And Prop 20 tightens restrictions on parole, the measure limiting parole for certain nonviolent criminal activities, including repeat theft. It would also expand DNA testing to require samples from those convicted of theft and domestic violence. Supporters say this prevents early release of human traffickers, while those opposing say that this would bring a lot of expenses at the cost of funding for rehab, education, and mental health services. Prop 22 has drawn a lot of attention, focusing on workplace rules for the gig economy. The measure classifies employees as independent contractors, exempting app-based services like Uber and Postmates from providing employee benefits. This would grant them more flexibility to their working hours and location at the cost of employee benefits such as sick leave or health care. Those in favor say that the measure allows more flexibility to workers' hours, but critics say this comes at the cost of their rights and the measure denies the driver's safety. And Prop 25 hopes to enact a referendum to the current bail system. The measure would eliminate the need to pay for bail, instead assessing inmates based on their risk to the public. Advocates say this is a good replacement for the current system, which favors the wealthy. Opponents, however, argue that the new computer-based system could end up being an expensive alternative. For more information on these propositions and others, visit the California Secretary of State Voter Guide at voterguide.sos.ca.gov. For Chapman News, I'm Spencer Riley.
A reminder that early poll voting starts today and continues until Election Day on Tuesday, November 3rd. And be sure to have your voice heard. That's all for politics this week. I'm Jasmine Sani. Back to you, Melissa.